It's that time of the year again. Spooky month, Halloween, and one big excuse to talk about scary things. And that's exactly what we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about the scariest place on Earth, Great Britain. And Thomas the Tank Engine, welcome to Souther, my friend. So, what's Shed 17? Well, it's a documentary-styled horror project made by Paul Zvitz back in 2015, which asks the question, what if bioengineered trains with face? Alright, that's just insane. Our story begins on Souther in 1982, where we get to see a establishing shot with some scary music, and after like 1.5 minutes we get a narrator who tells us about less scary shit, and how all of those silly stories were in fact not that silly. And after that we get a title sequence showing Shed 17. Now, I just want to mention this, the whole video is emulating the style of those History Channel documentaries, which of course means that you can't talk about trains without mentioning World War II, because of course that's how that works. The important things here are that Souther was meant as a detention camp for Germans, and that is one dude, Professor Wilhelm, moves to Souther. Trust me, he's important. And you know why? Because he's a biologist. Oh yeah, and his son's important too, but let's talk about that later. Oh yeah, and we also get introduced to Dr. Owen Ruth and Keith Hartley, who will play the role of narrators for this documentary, which means that they will tell you about a lot of things. Alright, let's get back to talking about Wilhelm's son, Hans, who, after that whole war thing, goes to study biology and engineering and goes full scientist by inventing a process called biofusion, which combines organic parts with mechanical implants. Man, I really wonder how all of this could lead to a story about Thomas the Tank Engine. Breaking news, Hans started a fucking company and got married. And he got a son. Wait, why does he look like that?
Abi, why does my son look like he has been run over?
Alright, let's skip ahead a bit and see what young Thomas is up to. Oh no, Thomas is dead. Now, you might be wondering, how did Hans react to his son dying? Well, let's just say completely disappearing from public for like a year wasn't on my bingo card. Oh my god, holy shit, they turned him into a train! Now, I think Keith's reaction here is justified.
What did you think when you first came to meet Thomas the Tank Engine?
Alright, now some capitalism happens and they takes over Souther research. After that, they biofuse a bunch of people into trains and other things. And some train dies because he was bioengineered rather poorly. Oh yeah, and Mavis dies because some idiots try to fuel her with diesel, which, well, ends in a big fire. And because those accidents keep happening, the people start to ask questions. Meanwhile, Thomas is working perfectly fine and seems to be the only train that is somehow not affected by the whole biofusion failure thing. The documentary continues and we get to know that the sold biofusion to some other railway companies. This obviously isn't good, which Hans realizes and resigns, which is completely logical. Wilhelm, on the other hand, oh yeah, apparently most people in this universe are made from wood and sawdust, which is meant as a nod to the original series. But yeah, it's also very funny because, you know, wood. Alright, let's jump ahead a bit. The whole Wilhelm thing got covered up by the and he now wants to test bigger engines, which of course means more dead trains. Now, you might be asking, who is it this time? Well, it's Gordon. Now, because of all that fire, and because some people are hurt, they have to get him out in some way, which isn't made easier by who wants to cover all of this up, which leads to the only way of getting them out of there being Harold the helicopter, which, who could have guessed, ends in Harold and all the passengers dying. Now it's time for cleanup. Who's gonna help us with that? Well, it's Henry. The whole cover-up thing works for a while, until Henry sees what's inside Shed 17 by accident. After that, he talks to the fat and talks to Thomas for one last time. The only thing he says to him is stay away from Shed 17. And that basically sealed Henry's fate, because he wasn't supposed to know, which means it's time for the flying kipper, which is an actual story, by the way. And guess what happens in that story? Henry crashes and gets sent to crew, which he comes back from in the story, but not here. Here he just dies there. There is a reason I really love this scene here, and that's because it basically shows you the story of someone who's been set up to die, and he can't do anything about it. The story ends with Henry dying, and that's just incredibly cruel. Now, you might already know what happens next, but I'm gonna make it short and just say Thomas found out that they got rid of Henry and now wants to know what's in Shed 17, which he does. Breaking news, he is a clone, and even more breaking news, he isn't even the first one. Alright, now some stuff happens which I'm just gonna put in the insane beyond reason category, because words can't describe what happens next. I just want to say one thing about this scene. First off, yeah, it's really just, I can't even describe how you come up with something like this, but the funny thing here is that it uses the Slendy Thomas scream, which is just very, very funny. Like, here's how Thomas screams. Yeah, this is awesome. Alright, now some documentary stuff happens showing that biofusion got banned the next year and some other stuff. Oh yeah, China is the only country where biofusion is still a thing. And that's how it ends. Now let's talk about what we just watched for a bit. Alright, what have I learned after watching Shed 17? Well, train's less scary apparently. But to be honest, Shed 17 is a story about a dad and his dad who lost a child and went insane, creating a horrifying abomination called Thomas the Tank Engine. But it's also a story about corporate greed and cover-ups, which, to be honest, is quite deep for a video made in 2015. Or maybe I'm just looking way too much into it. There are of course some things in the video which are a bit dated or not exactly up to date with today's standards, but it's also a video made by a British person in 2015. So yeah, that's about all I have to say. But I do wonder, what happened to Dr. Owen Ruth?
Loyalty, honour, respect. When you lose even one of those, you take something away from those around you.
Oh man.